All right, hello and welcome to Info Session 7 covering vocal mimicry. A little bit of a welcome and intro about me first. Some things to know include that I am not a speech pathologist and I am not a career professional, which means that I have not been doing this for 6 years for a degree. I have not been doing this every day of my life or every day of my employed life as my job 8 hours a day, so I don't have the kind of practice that a career professional would have either. That said, I do have 20 plus years of various other vocal experience, including singing, acting, ASMR, voice acting, all sorts of other different pieces that I've used my voice for and adapted my voice for. So I've got lots and lots of practice at using it individually for those different pieces, as well as for vocal feminization itself, which is something that I picked up when I was starting to make my way through my transition. I'm also currently learning to teach from a career professional that vocal feminization that I did as I was making my way through my transition is something that I was learning from a professional, and after I was done getting lessons from her on how to feminize my own voice, I got lessons from her on how to help other people feminize their voices as well. So that's where my information is coming from. It's all coming from a good source. She's very knowledgeable on what she does. She's a keynote speaker at lots of different university presentations, so she knows what she's about, and that's where I go when I don't have the answer to a question that I'm trying to answer. Now, for healthy practice, we've got a few tips. We want to make sure that we always warm up before we practice. We want to make sure that we take our time. We want to make sure that we sort of gently ramp our voice up to whatever it is that we're going to be practicing that day. Even if it's only going to be 2 minutes worth of practice, it's always worth the while to make sure that you're warming up. If you're going to be practicing at all, it's important to keep hydrated, and it's an important thing to keep yourself towards water for your hydration. There are certain very specific other options that you can use, but water is best, especially an hour before and during your practice session. If you feel any pain, strain, or tension as you practice, it's time to stop for the day. Those are all good body signals that indicate that there's something that you need to sort of pay more attention to or adjust, and you probably want to adjust those things in your next session, not the one you're currently in. We want to make sure we give our body lots of time to recover before we start practicing again to make sure that we don't strain ourselves or do ourselves any permanent damage. And lastly, there are lots of exercises out there that are no longer used for various reasons, but one such exercise that is no longer used for specifically harmful reasons is the exercise where you would swallow and then catch the swallow at the top of the motion. Please don't do this. If you see it recommended anywhere, please just pass over it, skip it. This can be very dangerous, can eventually lead to choking if it's done wrong, so please be careful not to do this exercise anymore. There are lots of other ways that we can accomplish the exact same thing with no risk. And the general way that I teach has you sort of moving yourself to a more extreme, more comedic, more over-the-top version of whatever it is that you're learning first, and then dialing back to whatever it is that you're actually aiming for. We want to make sure that this is not the kind of thing that you get stuck on unless that's the kind of voice that you want, but we do want to make sure that you have a nice, strong separation between what your voice used to sound like and what your voice is going to sound like now. That can kind of sound a little bit funky to some people. It feels like, naturally it would be easy to tell the two apart, but after you've practiced for some time, it can get a little tougher to figure that out. So make sure to make it a little over the top when we practice first. If it feels a little goofy, not to worry, we'll dial it back sometime. So what is vocal mimicry? Vocal mimicry is pretty much what it says on the tin. We want to make sure that we're approaching it the right way. So this is just anything that we do where we are copying something that somebody else does or trying to make ourselves sound like somebody else does. We're taking somebody else's voice for reference, and we're listening to the way that their voice sounds and trying to adjust our own voice to match, either exactly or just partially, depending on if there are different pieces that you like or if you just like the whole thing. It's a very good practice. You don't have to match anything particularly. Lots of people go through their entire vocal feminization practice without ever having picked a vocal mimicry reference. Lots of people don't aim for a particular thing, they just experiment around a lot until they find something that they like. If that's your method, that's great, do that too. You don't have to use vocal mimicry at all in your practice if you don't want to. If you do want to, though, how do we practice it? First, we're going to listen to whatever references we have for the voice that we want to sound like. We're going to try and identify the different pieces of the voice. So that's resonance, vocal weight, pitch variation, all sorts of different things. We're going to listen to how they use their voice, whoever the reference is. We're going to listen to how they use their voice and how that's different from what we're using. We're going to identify the different pieces that are present in their voice, what their resonance sounds like, what their vocal weight sounds like, what their pitch variation sounds like, what the rhythm of their words sounds like, how they vary their pitch, etc. And we're going to analyze those things and listen to how different they sound from our own voice and why. Does your reference's voice sound brighter or darker than yours? Thicker or thinner than yours? Do they vary their pitch more or on specific words? Things like that. Once you've sort of found those different pieces that are sounding different from the way that you sound, you're going to isolate a moment in an interview, in a show, somewhere you can find a nice clean clip of what they sound like. And even better if it focuses on something that you want to adjust about your own voice. You're going to isolate that moment and you're going to listen to it over and over and start practicing it yourself. We'll go over how to do that in future slides. And then we work up to applying those pieces that we've practiced or that we've worked on or that we've learned to applied in our own voice, applied when we're speaking to other people, applied when we're working on our own feminine sound. What do we need to be careful of when it comes to vocal mimicry? Lots of things, but notably, and first always, is vocal strain. We want to be sure that we don't cause ourselves any strain as we practice. If you feel any strain, it's time to stop for the day. Make sure you hydrate well and take good care of your voice for the rest of the day. We don't want to damage our voice in any way, so we want to make sure that we're not sort of aiming for the no pain, no gain method that you'll typically hear about in the gym. We want to make sure that we keep our voice comfortable at all times as much as we're able. It's not always possible. Sometimes you will find yourself strained or tense or something along those lines. If you do find yourself in that situation, make sure to give yourself lots of time to rest and recover so that you don't damage your voice in any way. Performative voice and or losing the natural sound are sort of our next piece here. We want to make sure that we don't find ourselves in a spot where we can only say, for example, the line that an actor says, or that we can only repeat the sound of what they say in an interview. We want to make sure that we're able to communicate with other people in the voice that we're after, and we want to make sure that we're able to do that in a conversational way. Some people may find that as they practice, especially lines from shows, if the reference that you're using is a character in a show, that things may be a little bit over the top because they're being presented in a sort of dramatic context. We don't always want that in our day-to-day speech. Sometimes we do, but we don't always want that kind of thing in our day-to-day speaking. So make sure that once you get the hang of what it is that you're looking for in somebody's voice, in your vocal mimicry, that you learn how to apply that in a conversational, casual, comfortable way. We also want to be sure that we don't adopt any unwanted mannerisms or any unintentional mannerisms. So this is especially things towards, for example, speech impediments or accents. If you don't have either of those things initially in your own voice, then it's going to be very noticeable if you shift to your new voice and suddenly you have an accent that you didn't have before, or you've suddenly adopted a stammer that you didn't have before. If you do have those things, make sure that you continue to incorporate them in the new voice as long as that's something you're looking to sort of maintain about your own sound. Specifically, this comes to accents. Vocal speech impediments can be a little bit different. It depends on if you're trying to eliminate that from your speech as well at the same time. But for accents especially, you want to make sure that you maintain your own accent regardless of what you're doing, regardless of what you're working on, and regardless of the accent that your reference has. You want to make sure that you keep your own accent at all times as much as you are able. And then losing the natural sound, this is somewhat like what we were talking about with the performative voice, but we want to make sure that you're still communicating with the same sound as your reference, but in the same way that you typically would with your sort of means of speaking. If you're more casual than your reference tends to be, you don't want to suddenly get strict and stern and sort of cold when you move into your new voice. You want to be able to still use that new voice in a very casual way. If that's sort of what fits your presentation style or your conversational style. So, We'll go into some exercises and some warm-ups here. For warm-ups for vocal mimicry, anything and everything is on the table. We're going to be using all of the different pieces of our voice, so we want to make sure that we warm up all the different pieces of our voice. Now that can take a long time. Sometimes people try and get a couple of exercises in, or warm-ups in rather, that will sort of cover multiple pieces at once, and we highly recommend, those of us in the teaching community highly recommend a really thorough warm-up if your practice is going to include vocal mimicry, because it's going to be working on a lot of working on a lot of parts of your voice all at once. That kind of thing can be complicated, and it can also cause a larger amount of impact on the way that your voice sounds and on the amount of pressure and intensity that you're putting into your voice. So that means that without warming up, you're at a much higher risk of causing yourself vocal damage or vocal strain. So some of the exercises that I recommend when it comes to warming up for vocal mimicry include things like lip trills or straw phonation, bubble blowing, either making the sound or blowing bubbles through a straw into a glass of water or bottle of water and doing the same thing, humming in the back of your throat as you do that. Whichever method you choose, we're going to start at the very bottom of our vocal range, then slide all the way to the top, and slide all the way back down to the bottom again. Then we're going to go from the top to the bottom to the top. Next, a little bit of pitch work. Going to sing up and down a scale just for the first 5 notes, and we're going to see how high we can get. Once we get to the highest point that we can manage without going into our falsetto, we're going to repeat that pattern a few times, then come back down again. All together, that's going to sound like this. 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2. No, that's a different exercise. That's what I'm getting to in a moment, kind of. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's about as high as I can go right now, so I'll repeat this a few times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I'll come back down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And you can do as much of that as you like. The last exercise that I use for a warm-up is going to be sort of along the pattern that I accidentally started in the previous exercise, and we're going to do this on a hum. So we're going to do a 8-number scale, but we're going to do it humming, and we're going to add another number every time. This is going to sound a little bit funky. If I were to sing it out, it would sound like this. 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But I'm going to do it with humming instead, so I'm not actually going to say those numbers out loud. It'll sound like this. And then we'll do it in reverse from the top. It's a little bit high for me. can do as many repetitions of that as you want. You can scuff it up as much as I do. It's totally up to you. Once we've got a bunch of good practice going, once we've got a bunch of good warm-up happening, then we can start moving into vocal mimicry. Now you'll notice this is fairly blank. There's not a lot of actual exercise going on here. That's because vocal mimicry is on its own, sort of its own exercise. We're working on all of the pieces of our voice at once, and we're using mimicry as a means of tuning and working on our voice. You're not necessarily using this as a sort of end goal. You don't have to make your voice sound like somebody else's for it to be right. In fact, most people don't. Most people will work with vocal mimicry as a means to increase their vocal control and find some pieces that they like to hear in their own voice, but they don't wind up going exactly to the point of copying somebody one-to-one. What we're going to do here is start with an A-B with reference. So what you're going to do is listen to your reference, find a good clip of something that's short, something that's easy to remember. You're going to listen to that clip over and over and over again, making some notes, either mental or physical, whatever you like, about what's different in that clip from the way you sound. Do they sound brighter or darker than you? Do they sound thicker or thinner than you? Do they vary their pitch more or less than you? Where do they vary their pitch? How does it sound? Are they fast? Are they slow when they speak? Do they think more? Do they have lots of sort of words that they use to fill time? It's totally up to you on what you sort of pick out that makes sense to you, what's more interesting to you, what is a thing that you want to focus on. But you're going to make a lot of notes about what they sound like and how that differs from the way you sound. You've got lots of that sort of laid out for yourself. You're going to listen to the recording of your reference, and then you're going to try and do the best that you can to imitate that voice out loud. You're going to listen to yourself back if you can by monitoring through your headphones, making it so you can hear yourself back as you speak through your microphone. If that's not possible, no problem. You can just listen to yourself out loud. But you're going to listen to yourself, you're going to speak the line or the phrase or whatever it is that your reference is using, and then you're going to play the clip of your reference again and listen to what they say. Listen to how it sounds. You're going to see if those two things sound similar. If they don't, if you can identify what's different, you're going to try and adjust that to make it sound more like them. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Listen to your reference, try and imitate. See what's different. Listen to your reference, try and imitate. See what's different over and over again. As you get further along with this kind of exercising, you may find that you're sort of getting a little bit lost as to what your voice is starting to sound like, what your voice is sounding like by comparison to your reference, and how much you've changed or haven't changed what you sound like. If that's the case, you can try doing an A-B to a recording instead. So you're going to listen to your reference, and then you're going to record yourself doing your imitation of that reference. Then you're going to play the recording and the reference side by side. You're going to compare the two and see what's different there. What helps about this is that the recording will make you more aware of what you sound like, and it will remove some of the pieces that make it harder to tell how you sound externally. There's lots of vibrations that go on internally, lots of pieces of your jaw and skull that are vibrating as you're speaking, which means that it's tougher to hear how you actually sound to the outside world. A recording, though, is going to give you a much better idea of how that sounds. So you're going to have a much better idea if you're sounding close to what your reference sounds like. So you're going to record yourself, listen to the reference and the recording side by side, make note of what's different, try and change those things about the way that you're producing your voice, do another recording, and then listen to that recording side by side with your reference. Repeat as you like. Now, if you're finding that the previous two exercises that you've been working on have been, getting fairly comfortable, you're feeling like you're in a good spot with them, then you can try and do some of the optional or trickier exercises if you feel so inclined. Some of these include things like reading a script from a movie or show that your reference was in, or something along those lines, of lines that you haven't heard before. Trying to perform those lines first, record yourself, and then listen to how the person who you're taking reference from sounded when they did those lines. Obviously, you're not going to find yourself in a spot where you're able to make a one-to-one comparison here. They're going to have delivered it differently based on the day. But you can find, the pieces that are similar and see how good a job you're doing of really getting the feel for what their voice sounds like and how to make your voice sound like that. The other piece you can work on is mimicry extrapolation or various impressions, trying to take the voice that you've learned to copy or to mimic and try to make various other sentences that you've never heard them say before. Trying to use that voice in ways that are not just repeating the same phrase or the same clip that you've heard your reference used probably now dozens of times as you've been practicing. So it's the kind of thing that you can use for fun, but also for seeing how much vocal control you can get and seeing, what other people think of your impression of the person that you're trying to do a reference of. One last note before we get to the end of the presentation here, we do want to make sure that we are addressing and using vocal mimicry in the way that's correct for us. Some people will find that they're in a spot where they want to mimic a voice exactly, and that's great. No problems there. That's going to really help you with nailing in and tuning all the different pieces of your voice to sound exactly a certain way. It's going to give you a lot of control. However, there are lots of people who will find that as they practice, they get to a point where they've sort of picked the pieces that they want out of the reference that they're using, and that's enough for them. That's also valid. That's the way that I did my vocal mimicry when I was using it as a tool for myself, was just saying, okay, I like the way that this person's voice sounds when they're using a thinner vocal weight. I like the way that that person's voice sounds because they have a generally brighter resonance. Various pieces like that. So you can do it however you want. Vocal mimicry is not a you must do it this way kind of experience. It's very much the kind of thing that you want to tailor and adjust to fit your experience, to fit what you're looking for. Vocal mimicry is also very, very tough. It's a very tricky exercise to do. It's a very, very difficult application of the voice. So we want to make sure that we're very, very gentle with ourselves as we practice vocal mimicry. If you find yourself at a point where you cannot copy exactly what it is that you're looking for, that's not a sign that you've failed. That's just a sign that whatever voice that you've picked is difficult, and that's okay. You don't have to match one-to-one to be a success. Most people don't. Everybody's voices are super unique, and lots of people have different constructions of in fact, everybody has different constructions of their vocal tract, how they're shaped, how they have, how they have different mouth shapes, they have different throat shapes, they have different lengths of body, and all of those things contribute to the way that the voice sounds. So making your voice sound exactly like somebody else becomes very, very difficult because you have to adjust all those things so fine-tuned. All of this is to say, make sure that you're using vocal mimicry in a way that is constructive and helpful to you, and don't get discouraged if you find yourself in a spot where it's hard or it's not working exactly right. That's very common when it comes to vocal mimicry, even for folks who are very skilled impressionists. So be gentle with yourself. Hopefully this helps, and if you have any questions, do let me know. I'd be happy to answer.